Hello, and welcome to the Petaluma Historical Library and Museum. I'm Clint Gilbert, Board President of the Museum Association, and I'm honored to introduce this virtual grand opening of our exhibit, Petaluma's Participation in the Women's Suffrage Movement. We have with us today honored guests, Congressman Huffman and Petaluma Mayor Teresa Barrett, and you will be hearing from each of them shortly. Our Museum Association has been fulfilling its mission to preserve Petaluma's history and provide educational services here since 1981. This beautiful 1906 Carnegie Library building is our home. And that opening picture many of you saw this evening with the amazing lighting was of our facade. I'm disappointed that you are missing our interior with its soaring wood columns and suspended stained glass dome. I hope once we do reopen, you will make a point of visiting us. Like many cultural institutions here in Sonoma County and across the country, we remain closed to the public by the pandemic. Without income, we have struggled financially to continue our behind-the-scenes work of archiving donations and updating our exhibits to COVID-safe systems. The task of mounting a new exhibit under these circumstances has been especially daunting, and it's been inspiring to see our exhibit curator overcome them so adroitly and bring this exhibit, years in the planning, years in the making, come together so perfectly. Paula has been volunteering and curating exhibits here at the PMA for more than 10 years, and for this exhibit was joined by a co-curator, Catherine Reinhardt. And now, it's my honor to introduce you to the curator of this exhibit. Please welcome Paula Freund.
Clint, thank you for introducing the event and the building and the exhibit. I am Paula Freund. I'm a co-curator of this exhibit, Petaluma's Participation in the Women's Suffrage Movement. Catherine Reinhardt is my co-curator. This exhibit came to my attention back in 2019 when Catherine put out a clarion call to all the Sonoma County institutions. She was the manager of the Sonoma County Genealogy and History Library, as well as the president of the Sonoma County Heritage Network. She put out this clarion call to all the historical institutions in Sonoma County saying, what are you doing to celebrate the ratification of the 19th Amendment? It's centennial year in 2020, and we all want to chip in on this, in celebrating this event. I'm very embarrassed to say I wasn't certain which one was the 19th Amendment. So, as the curator of the exhibit, I have posted the text of the 19th Amendment, and I'd like to read it to you. It's brief. The right of the citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Aha. I now knew what this was all about, and I wanted to be involved. I called Catherine right away, and I said, Catherine, do you think we could co-curate an exhibit about Petaluma's participation in this women's movement to obtain the vote? She said, you know, I think there is sufficient information. We got to work researching, and we discovered a treasure trove of information about our community and the early pioneers and their participation in the fight to get women the right to vote. I think you will be pleasantly surprised with the exhibit and with the events that are coming up, and you can find out about them at petalumamuseum.com. In researching this exhibit, I realized this is a perfect exhibit to dedicate to someone very special. And I knew exactly who I wanted to dedicate this exhibit to. I wanted to dedicate it to the Honorable Congresswoman Lynn Woolsey. I did some research on her, and she spent 20 years in public service, serving women, families, children, education, the environment, and peace. The perfect woman to dedicate this exhibit to. Catherine Reinhardt said, let's also at the same time honor another Petaluman, the first female mayor of Petaluma, Helen Putnam. She'll be talking more about Helen later on in the event. At this point, let me turn the event over to another Petaluma woman who has dedicated many years of her life to public service, and that's Petaluma's own Mayor Teresa Barrett.
Hi, I am Teresa Barrett, and I am the mayor of Petaluma. And in this time of voter suppression, both through attacks on the Voting Rights Act and the United States Post Office, it is my honor to read a proclamation by the City of Petaluma celebrating the fight waged for the right to vote for women 100 years ago. As I read our city's proclamation, I urge each of you not only to exercise your right to vote, but I urge you to make sure everyone you know who can vote does this November 3rd. The City of Petaluma proclamation to celebrate the centennial of the ratification of the 19th century to the United States Constitution, and to honor our nation's core democratic value of the right to vote through promoting universal suffrage and encouraging voter registration. Whereas the year 2020 marks the centennial of the ratification of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which ensures the right to vote shall not be denied or abridged on account of sex. And whereas California on November 1st, 1919 became the 18th state to ratify the federal amendment, and whereas the state of California, in a prescient act of legislation on October 10th, 1911, ratified Proposition 4, Senate Constitution Amendment number 8, extending the right to vote to most California women. And whereas California suffragists worked diligently to secure that state amendment, and among them were 3 exceptionally courageous and persistent Petalumans, Abigail Goodwin Haskell, Ellen Hewlett Button, and Anna Morrison Reed. And whereas Petaluma hosted presentations by such prominent national suffragists as Laura DeForest Gordon, Carrie Chapman Catt, Frances E. Willard, and Dr. Anna Howard Shaw. And whereas in 1878, 212 Petaluma residents signed a women's suffrage petition addressed to the Congressman of the state of California, requesting an amendment to the state constitution establishing the equal political rights of all American citizens, irrespective of sex. And whereas in 1870, 391 Petaluma residents signed a petition for women's suffrage addressed to the Congressman of the state of California, requesting immediate action for an amendment that would secure to the women of California the right of suffrage. And whereas neither the 19th Amendment of the United States Constitution nor the 8th Amendment of the State of California Constitution guarantees suffrage to all women or all citizens of the United States, and whereas voter suppression continues to plague our nation, now therefore be it resolved that I, Teresa Barrett, Mayor of the City of Petaluma, along with the members of the City Council, do hereby recommend that all Petaluma citizens and civic institutions celebrate the centennial of the passage of the 19th Amendment, honor the contributions of past suffragists, both national and local, and continue the work left undone by our predecessors in honoring the core value of the right to vote within our democracy by promoting universal suffrage and voter registration. Now I'm pleased to introduce Catherine Reinhardt, the co-curator of this exhibit. Catherine is the past president of the Petaluma Museum Association and the current chair of the Sonoma County Heritage Network and a consulting historian. Catherine?
Thank you, Teresa, for that kind introduction and the reading of the proclamation. Wasn't it timely that that was done in January? Good evening, everyone, and happy National Women's Equality Day. I'm pleased to be here and to have played a role in this exhibit. The exhibit has provided me with a great opportunity to delve into readily examined archival records and to connect with so many people who generously shared their time and knowledge. My understanding of Petaluma's history has been expanded, and I've been introduced to some amazing individuals who contributed to the making of Petaluma, whose stories were largely undocumented until now, thanks to the tremendous efforts of Paula Freund. When Paula asked me to be a part of this exhibit, one of the things we discussed was who it should be dedicated to. For me, Helen Putnam immediately came to mind. Helen was the first elected mayor of the city of Petaluma 43 years after the passage of the 19th Amendment. She was also only the second woman to be elected to the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors. It was largely from the Helen Putnam collection at the Petaluma Regional Library, a collection consisting of 16 banker's boxes representing Helen's personal life from 1947 to 1981, that fellow historian and my good friend, John Sheehy, was able to compile this list here on the screen of Helen's other accomplishments. Not all of them are listed here, but some of the highlights. To gain a more personal understanding of Helen, John and I turned to Helen's family. Watching from Maine and Nashville tonight are Helen's daughter-in-law, Barbara, grandchildren, Sarah and Adam, and I suspect even great-grandson, GP. And speaking from Hawaii tonight, we have Helen's daughter, Kate Putnam Oliver. Welcome, Kate, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here and to see this honor for my mom. It's very nice. And the growing up years with her were terrific, of course. Being daughter, that's what I would say. But she was really a great mother. And as most of you know, one of her trademarks were her bracelets. And she would not to bed, but during the day and evening, she always had the bracelets on, whether she was going to a very casual affair or to something more dressy. The bracelets were always there. And also whilst growing up, especially when I was little, learning to count, guess what we counted? The bracelets, of course. And Rush, my brother, and I would always wonder, well, it's Mama's birthday, what shall we get her? It was a bracelet, of course. So her collection grew through the years, and they really did become a trademark of her, and I don't remember her going anywhere without them. She was a great teacher. As you all know, she taught many years in Petaluma. And I think one of the attributes of hers was her ability to listen. And she would listen to the little kids and to adults, and would always be able to give a report of her listening to them. And as you can see in some of the pictures, that she really enjoyed the young children. And that bell, if you're looking at some of the photos, there's a bell that we had on the front, or at the front of the house. And on the 4th of July, it was my dad who was actually the one that made the framework for the bell. And it always came out on the 4th of July, sort of a trademark mark. And through the years and growing up, it was terrific. And my mom and I became good friends as I got older. And one of our favorite things to do was to go shopping in San Francisco. And we'd get dressed up and hop in the car, drive down, I think it was about a 45-minute drive then to get to San Francisco, over the Golden Gate, down, I think, Van Ness to the Geary Street parking garage, out of the car, and then down to Union Square, where we did window shopping and some shopping, and then always had a nice lunch at one of the lovely restaurants around that area. So it was good fun. And as I said, we became good friends as I became older. And anyway, then it was getting back into the car and back up the well, it became a freeway. It was more of a highway back then. But when we left San Francisco, we always had to take one quick little look back at that full. And I know my mom loved it. And then back to Petaluma, and we always complimented ourselves on having such a wonderful time. So it was good. And I appreciate all that Catherine and Joe have done to make this event take place. So again, thank you, and aloha, Hawaii. Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you, Kate. So our next speakers are Jim Harbison and Skip Summer. Jim knew Helen when they both were on the Petaluma City Council from 1973 to 1978. When Helen died unexpectedly in July of 1984 during her second term, it was Jim who was appointed to fill her seat. Jim was interviewed in 2012 along with Skip Summer, a local historian and realtor who knew Helen in connection with several downtown Petaluma development projects. Jim, Skip, and others shared their thoughts about Helen, which were captured on a video produced by Andrew Martin and Janet Papina Cella as part of a program called Petaluma Memories. And we're happy to share some clips from that 2012 video now. But I encourage you to check out the entire episode, which is available on YouTube. Just go to Petaluma Memories, Helen Putnam, and you'll find it. Thank you.
She was a second grade school teacher and a principal, and she ran the city council much the same way, and she campaigned much the same way. She would listen to people, she'd tell them when she thought they were wrong, but she would always listen to people. She was just very personable, very personal. What we call getting votes retail. She didn't do mass mailing stuff like that. She did a lot of personal work. To give you an idea of Helen's personality and how she interacted with people, if you just look at this picture, this particular picture was taken in 1973 after we were elected. And there's Fred Mattei, who was a local businessman who's on the city council. Here's some young guy, I don't have any idea who he is. Here's Helen Putnam, and here's Bob Bruner, another local businessman who was on the city council. As you can see, we look like we're facing a firing squad. He's barely into it. Helen is already projecting, showing how interested she is, and just showing her personality and how it affected everything she did. And then here's another picture which shows Helen being, I guess you call it an action photo here. And there's a man who had a grocery store, as you can see, a grocery store here named Bob Mallet, a local businessman. And she was, I think she loved to dance, and she certainly was active. But you can see that personality showing through right there. I mean, this was not just a picture for her, this was her personality. And of course, education was her big issue before she got on the city council. And here are some members of the community and school board. There was a Dr. Clement Stimson, a Dr. Hall Weston, who were here in the picture. Norman Neal, another businessman. Here is Helen, and she was probably, in this picture, was probably head of the school board. And I imagine they're looking at a model of a new school that they're going to build in Petaluma. And you can see that everybody else is fairly happy, but Helen's personality is just flashing through. I think she was probably very happy they were getting a new school, but that was just her personality. And then here's one where, here's Richard Nixon, and I'm not sure what his capacity was then, whether he was senator or vice president or whatever, but as you can see, Helen is not intimidated by talking to a power broker in Washington. As you can see, she felt she was equal, and she was. I mean, she was very sure of herself, very sure of what she stood for, and it came out in all her pictures. And nobody was being coy or anything like that. She was interested in talking. She's probably talking about, we need a new school in Petaluma. What are you going to do about it? She was probably already pushing for it. But that's her personality, and that was probably her biggest asset in politics.
Helen Putnam passed away in 1984 when she was supervisor of our district. The Argus Courier obituary called her Petaluma's political matriarch, and that she was. Helen was a doer, and she got it done. In response to her death, the city dedicated Petaluma Plaza Park in her name. The County of Sonoma dedicated Petaluma Regional Park, 171 acres, in her name. And perhaps most important to Helen would be that the California League of Cities initiated an award, an annual award, the Helen Putnam Award for Excellence in Government.
Very well said. Thank you, Kate and Jim and Skip. Now I'd like to turn things over to Mayor Teresa Barrett, the fourth woman to serve as mayor of Petaluma, fourth in a city that was incorporated 162 years ago. Teresa.
So thank you, Catherine. Now it's my distinct honor to welcome our United States Congressional Representative, Jared Huffman. Petaluma has been lucky to have the best possible representation at the federal level for almost 3 decades. And of course, that's because we have an engaged community that votes. Congressman Huffman, welcome to the dedication of our local exhibit on Petaluma's participation in the women's suffrage movement.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor Barrett. It's an honor to be with you and to have a chance to celebrate this special day for so many of the women in our community, from the leaders and trailblazers to the young girls who have been and will be inspired by them and are going to go on to make their mark. Big shout out to the Petaluma Museum Association. I love your new exhibit, and I really appreciated that virtual tour we got a little while ago, honoring Petaluma's role in the suffrage movement, and of course celebrating your first female mayor, Helen Putnam, and your most famous vice mayor, former council member and our friend Congresswoman Lynn Woolsey. I have to take a moment to acknowledge the amazing women in my life. My own mother, who ran a small business and was a single mom that worked hard to raise me and my 2 brothers. I live with 2 strong women now, my wife Susan, who's a teacher, my daughter Abby, who's a junior in college, studying remotely, as many students are these days, and my terrific district director, Jenny Calloway. I've had amazing women also that I've worked with as colleagues in the state assembly, people like Speaker Karen Bass, and now as a member of Congress, I've had a chance to work with and call colleague people like Nancy Pelosi and Kamala Harris. So I've had some amazing women that have influenced my life. And in this pantheon of great women in my district and in my life, there's a special place for Lynn Woolsey. As many of you know, she got elected to Congress in 1992. And at that time, it was called the Year of the Woman. 24 women, a record at that time, were elected to the House of Representatives, and 4 women were elected to the United States Senate. This was a big deal at the time. Now, fast forward to 2020, we had 4 women senators running for president of the United States this year. But in 1992, these were amazing trailblazing achievements, and Lynn Woolsey was a huge part of it. She went on to do fantastic work in Congress for 20 years. And that sounds itself like an amazing achievement, but what it doesn't fully reflect is that working in Congress really takes a toll on you. All of the travel, all of the stress, all of the demands. So a year in Congress is really like a dog year. And I'm aging in dog years, so that's living proof of that. So I think instead of 20 years, we really should give her credit for, 140 years of service in the United States Congress. That's what I'd like to thank her for. And the truth is, Lynn and the other women elected in 1992 really were trailblazers, but we were just getting started back then. We now have a lot more women in Congress. Currently, in the current Congress, we have 101 women in the House, or 23.4%. That is the most ever. Of those 101, 88 of them are Democrats. So we need our Republican colleagues to catch up. But Democrats are not going to wait for them. We have moved on to have the first woman Speaker of the House on her second term as Speaker, and we will soon elect the next Vice President of the United States as a woman, another major breakthrough. Lynn Woolsey helped blaze all these trails, and our Congress and our county and our country are all better for it. Lynn served on the Education and Workforce Committee during her time in the Congress. She was a champion on education issues. And it's, I think, very important that she wasn't just content to break all this ground for herself. She used her role in Congress to break ground for others. She worked on a bill designed to increase the involvement of women and minorities in the sectors of network and information technology, apropos of our online gathering tonight. She led the Go Girl measure to encourage young girls to study science and math. Of course, she's known as an early member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. She chaired that caucus during the 111th Congress, and she spearheaded an initiative at that time that has become an annual tradition for the Progressive Caucus, the Alternative People's Budget. Lynn described it back then as showing that you can tame the deficit without shredding the safety net, without destroying Medicare, without giving the back of the hand treatment to the middle class. And we continue to try to do that every year in this tradition that she got started with the People's Budget. Lynn truly did work for the people. And today is Women's Equality Day, of course. It is a day to honor all the women who've helped us make these great strides. But we also know the fight is far from over. You know the statistics. Women continue to earn less than men for the same work, 77 cents on the dollar for every dollar a man makes. Women account for nearly 2/3 of minimum wage workers. Our country still lags badly behind the rest of the developed world when it comes to family and medical leave protections. Almost half of our full-time employees have no coverage for family and medical leave. And there are ongoing battles for women's reproductive health and the right to choose. It really just never ends. Even voting, something that women won the right to do 100 years ago, yet today, countless women, particularly women of color, are disenfranchised and face unfair hurdles to simply practice their right to vote. And in fact, last night at the Republican National Convention, you might give the Republicans credit for having some women speakers. Well, it turns out, we find out today, one of those women speakers believes in household voting, where the man actually gets to call the shots on a single unified vote for the household. That is not progress, and I don't think we want to go backward when it comes to this hard-fought progress for women. So our work continues, but we are in a much better place to fight these battles because of Lynn Woolsey. Lynn is remembered as a member of Congress who was passionate and outspoken, a leader who fought for a more just and peaceful world. In fact, she really said it perfectly in her final speech as a member of Congress, and I'll quote from that speech. "Why shouldn't we aim for a perfect world? You see, I'm absolutely certain that if we don't work toward a perfect world, we won't even come close to providing a safe, healthy, and secure world for our grandchildren and their grandchildren." Lynn overcame so many challenges, did the work, inspired so many, and brought us closer in that journey toward a more equal and perfect world. I'm really grateful to continue her work in Congress. I'm honored to be able to do that and to be with all of you here today. Enjoy your evening, and thank you very much for letting me be part of celebrating Lynn Woolsey. I'll now turn it over to Dr. Frank Chung.
Hi, Lynn. It's great to see you guys tonight, and that's a tough act to follow. I really appreciate getting to know Lynn. In 2012, I had the great fortune of being appointed only the 5th president in the history of Santa Rosa Junior College, and, by the way, the first president to live in Petaluma. So I really was fortunate to move to Petaluma. My wife, Lena, and I rented a house on 922 B Street, which just so happened to be across the street from Lynn Woolsey, who just recently retired from Congress. And I used to tell people and brag, you know, I live left of Lynn Woolsey. That's where my house is. And people would say, how could you be left of Lynn Woolsey? You'd have to live in Havana if you were any more left. And that became kind of a standing joke. But I really felt that Lynn was a gift to Lena and I. We came here. We didn't really know a lot of people in Petaluma. And she's such a maven. You know, in that book, The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell, they talk about mavens. These are people that know everybody. They know where to get the best deals on refrigerators. They know who to call for certain decisions and who the elected officials were and where all the skeletons were buried. And Lynn has just been such a great friend to me and to Lena. And we've had many a night at her house or my home exchanging dinner, getting to know her cat Molly, getting to know her wonderful family. And Lynn has been such a great resource to me and to Santa Rosa Junior College. She has come to many events. She often serves as a guest speaker on classes around environmental justice. And she shares her wisdom, and she's like a walking encyclopedia when it comes to Congress. And for those who don't know, prior to coming to Santa Rosa, I served at the U.S. Department of Education under Arnie Duncan as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Community Colleges. So Lynn and I have often very spirited conversations around public policy, and her dedication to education is reflected by her work as a board member for Literacy Works, and Paul Heavenridge will talk more about that. She's brought people like Robert Reich, Barbara Lee, and Peter Coyote to come speak to us. These are people that normally wouldn't pass through Petaluma or Sonoma County, but she's able to do that. And so she's mentored many young folks who want to become elected officials, and she's just an environmentalist, a peace advocate, women's rights, and she's really an advocate for the poor and for human rights and for equity and social justice before it became popular. And so she was a woman who was a trailblazer, ahead of her time, and people are now just catching up to Lynn Woolsey. And I've had an opportunity to get to know her as a wonderful mother to her children and a great-grandmother to her children. And she's just friends to so many people. And I think she's a fearless advocate for many of us around women's rights. And so therefore, I have the distinct privilege and honor to introduce to you my friend and your friend, the Honorable Congressman Lynn Woolsey. Here you go, Lynn. Congratulations on this well-deserved honor.
Thank you, Frank. This is an honor, believe me. I want to thank, first off, Paula Freund. Every one of you that is watching this today must get online and do the tour of the museum and the suffragist movement. It is so well done. She taught me things when I was going, not that I know everything anyway, but she taught me so much when I was going through the exhibit with her. Thank you, Paula. And thank you, Catherine, for being such a good partner for Paula. So, Teresa, Mayor Barrett, thank you for being you and for carrying on and being such a good mayor to our city. Congressman Jared Huffman, thank you, thank you, thank you. My children, thank you. If you weren't in my seat, well, it's not my seat, it's your seat. If you weren't there, I would probably be going wacko. So everybody knows that Lynn Woolsey is having a nice retirement because she has Jared Huffman in Washington, D.C. as her congressman. Thank you, Jared. And Frank, Dr. Frank Chong, who is leading the #1 community college in this country, Santa Rosa Junior College. I knew it when I was on the education committee. I was always able to brag about what a good school we had. And he's carrying on that tradition and making it even better. The community absolutely loves you, Frank. Thank you for coming to us and being part of our community and bringing Lena with you. Thank you, thank you. Probably I wouldn't be here if it hadn't been because I hadn't gotten to watch Mayor Putnam. I mean, Helen Putnam lived down the street and across from us. She was, without a doubt, one of the most gracious, elegant women I had ever met. She was the only woman in groups of men where she always ended up being the leader. And she wasn't just nice, believe me, she was effective. Petaluma is well known for our growth control. We went to the Supreme Court so that we could have growth control in our community. And Helen Putnam was the mayor at that time. She made it happen. Growth control, Petaluma style, is taught in all the universities across the country. So thank you for not only being nice, Helen Putnam, but for being very effective. My children, though, knew Helen Putnam, not as the mayor, but as the lady down the street who always came to her door and always purchased whatever they had to sell for their school project. They felt very comfortable with her, and she was so nice to them. And thank you, suffragettes. Without you passing the 19th Amendment 100 years ago, Helen and I probably wouldn't be being honored today. In fact, I'm sure we wouldn't. But we are. And we are because women and some men over 100 years ago were persistent and impatient and real warriors. They knew that half the country should be voting with the other half. They actually got into what Congressman John Lewis would call good trouble. They got into trouble, but that good trouble ended with absolutely good results. 75 years later, I was already getting ready to run for Congress, but I wasn't sure if I would or not. I approached the women from the Sonoma County Commission on the Status of Women and the women from the Women's History Project in Sonoma County. Those women, Molly McGregor, Bonnie Iberg, the late Mary Ruth's daughter, Sue Smith, Barbara Toman, and the entire staff of the Women's History Project said yes. They said, we've always worked for women we supported, but they never win, but we will help you. Well, thank heavens they did, because they were such brilliant, energetic, and creative people that our small group looked like a mass when we were someplace. People thought that we just had this huge contingent of supporters when we first got started. But they carried me through the day, and we won our election. And for 20 years, they've been my compass. I so didn't want to ever disappoint the women who had backed me so totally in order to start 20 years in Congress. Now we're having another election. Teresa mentioned it. We all have to think about it. Every woman, every man, of every age and every color and ethnic and sexual persuasion have to vote and bring anybody and everybody they know along with them. Because I can tell you, this is probably the most important election, certainly in my lifetime. And if it doesn't make a change to this country, there's a very good chance that we could lose our democracy. The suffragists would not have been pleased that they worked so hard and we didn't work equally as hard to secure what they had brought to us. We have a lot more to do, but we can't lose our country first. So please vote. I now have the honor to introduce Paul Heavenridge. Paul is the Executive Director of Literacy Works, and he is on the Sonoma County Library Commission, and he is Paula Freund's husband. So, you know, he's a very special person. You'd have to be all of that. Paul?
Thank you, Lynn. Yep, here I am, the Executive Director of Literacy Works and your Sonoma County Library Commissioner for Petaluma. And I have to tell you, I had the great fortune to call Lynn my friend. Even though Lynn is my Petaluma neighbor, I didn't actually meet her till 2012. And that was in her congressional office in the Rayburn House office building in DC. I wanted to talk to her about the work I was doing with low literacy adults at the time for the U.S. Department of Education. And from her seat on the Education and Workforce Committee, Lynn had positioned herself as one of Congress's foremost advocates for education issues. So I was really excited to meet with her in her homey congressional office. And if anybody's seen it, it was like coming to her home. And it also helped that I knew her daughter, Amy, who was on my board. So I got that invitation pretty easily. She could have been more gracious and friendly. We had many mutual interests, and she seemed generally interested in my literacy work. So fast forward to 2014, retired and back in Petaluma. We started talking about the fact that the average American adult had a reading level of about a seventh grader, and that business owners had complained for years to her that they could not find workers who could read and write and do math at a college level. So what could we do? Lynn and I came up with the Literacy Works Center program, and that program helps low literacy, low income adults enroll and succeed at SRJC. We started the center in 2015, and as Frank mentioned, we helped fund it by doing the Literacy Works lectures, where Lynn, of course, knew Robert Reich and Daniel Ellsberg and Congresswoman Barbara Lee, and we got David Brooks in and Dave Eggers, and it's been a pretty successful lecture series, and it helped fund our program. So now, with Lynn's support and expertise and the wonderful members of the Friends of the Literacy Works Center, the center is really changing lives. And I just have to throw out a couple of statistics because this is because of Lynn. 90% of our students are Latino. Our students have provided over $1 million of scholarships due to a family foundation that's been very generous. And we've given the scholarships to over 890 low-income, low-literacy students over the last 5 years. And whereas normally this population would drop out the first or second semester, we only had a dropout rate of 10%, and usually the dropout rate would be 60% or more. And so as of 2020, spring 2020, we've achieved 19 associate degrees, 14 transfers to four-year universities like UC Berkeley, UCLA, UCSC, Sonoma State, Sac State. And these are students that came in and read at a very low literacy level and would not succeed. So Lynn, thank you for all you've done for our low-income, underrepresented community, for Petaluma and for the North Bay. And I thank all of you for attending our kickoff today. Go vote, as Lynn said, very important. We're going to leave you with a special clip from the 1995 State of the Union address with President Bill Clinton.
I may be the only president who's actually had the opportunity to sit in the welfare office, who's actually spent hours and hours talking to people on welfare. And I am telling you, the people who are trapped on it know it doesn't work. They also want to get off. So we can promote together education and work and good parenting. I have no problem with punishing bad behavior or the refusal to be a worker or a student or a responsible parent. I just don't want to punish poverty and past mistakes. All of us have made our mistakes, and none of us can change our yesterdays, but every one of us can change our tomorrows. And America's best example of that may be Lynn Woolsey, who worked her way off welfare to become a congresswoman from the state of California.